Hello everyone and welcome back. In order to prevent unnecessary re-renderings of messages in our message list, we need a component that renders only one message, working in on-push change detection. This component will only re-render a message if it receives a new message reference as input. So let's quickly implement the component that we just described. So it's a pure presentational component. We are going to go here to the command line, and here we are going to do ngg. We're going to generate a component and we are going to call it chat message. So it will be the chat message component. So let's open the component. The component will be here ready to use. Let's quickly define its template. So the template will be here. This, we are going to take a message as input and we are going to render it like we see here on the screen. We can go back here to the message list and we can use the new component and pass it in the message. So let's do so. We can see here that we need to remove this selector here so that it's simply chat message. And if we go back here to our template, we are going to remove the app prefix. We are going to pass in, using the input property message, we are going to pass in the message that we are currently looping. Now, the only thing that we need to do here is we need to create here an input property. And the input property will be of type message view model. So let's hit Alt Enter to do our import. And let's simply annotate this with @input. And of course, in order to benefit from the rendering performance, we need to switch the change detection of this presentational component to on push. We can remove the empty ng-on-init and the empty constructor, and we can add a little bit of formatting with Alt Command L. And having this component in place is really the only thing that we need to prevent the same message from being re-rendered each time. So with this component, if we receive back the same message via @input, then we won't trigger the synchronization between view and view model. So this means that the DOM element will remain unchanged and the component will not be re-rendered. The only circumstance when this component gets re-rendered is if we pass it in via the message input, a completely new reference to a new message view model. Okay, so now that we have a chat message that is using on-push change detection, we have optimized our selectors, we are using memoization of the transformation between message and message view model. Let's then try everything out on the screen one last time and see if everything is still working as expected in this new optimized mode that we are running. So we should make sure that we have a valid bundle running in our development server. We should go to our API server and restart it to make sure that all the latest changes are there and that the data is resetted. And once we are sure that everything is in place, if we switch back to the browser, let's try things out. So let's select the first thread. Let's put the second chat window to Bob and the third chat window to Chuck. So let's make sure that the unread messages counter functionality is working as expected. So let's give here a few messages. So as we can see, the unread messages counter is being calculated as expected. If we switch back to this thread, this is still working, and let's quickly refresh the application. Select Alice again. So as we can see, all the messages have been read. Now if Bob, which is in the same thread as Alice, writes to Alice, let's exchange here a couple of messages. So as you can see, all the functionality is working as expected, but now the UI is more performant because we are minimizing the number of re-renders that we do when we have new data coming out of the store. Please remember that what we did in this last section, which was to introduce shallow cloning at the level of the reducers, introducing on-push change detection and memoized selectors, these things are really optimizations, and it's important only to use them if we absolutely need to. And not all our components in our application need necessarily to run under on-push change detection. I would suggest to keep that as an optimization for maybe a table with a very large amount of data that we happen to have in our user interface, And even then, I would suggest to introduce UI strategies like pagination and really see why do we have so much data in that screen. Another typical use case is if we have to run our code in constrained mobile devices. There we could use all the performance that we can get, but for example, if you are building a desktop enterprise application, you probably will not need on push change detection unless it's a very particular case. So it's just an overall reminder that what we covered here is an optimization.